residents of New York City. So we thank you very much for this, and we pray daily for your success in this journey, inshallah. Thank you.
وأسأل الله أن يصلي على محمد وآل محمد وأن يجعلني من المنتظرين لك والتابعين والناصرين لك على أعدائك.
Now this is while he was there. The enemies are among those who are martyred before you among the ranks of your loyal ones. Through your hands comes the relief for the believers, that's the Muslims, and the killing by of the infidels by your sword. Okay, so he's talking about the killing of the infidels, and Mamdani was there when that was going down, guys. That's what's being reported. All right, I don't want to think there's a civil war coming in America, folks. I really don't. But between the Muslims calling for the killing of the infidels, that's you, that's me, and this woman, and that's being generous, saying that, yeah, we're going to abolish the Senate. This is a DSA member on Sunday on Fox News. Abolish the Senate, presidency, and the Supreme Court. Abolish ICE, borders, and prisons. Defund the Pentagon. Mass amnesty for illegals. They're going to turn us into a third world country, folks. And there you go. Stay tuned. We'll be back tonight.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff operations officer, assisted the national security team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan, and served as the vice commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Looks like the Iran war might just expand from the Red Sea into the Caspian Sea, and the possibilities of an escalation increased after Iran accused Ukraine of targeting one of its vessels in the Caspian Sea. Iran's foreign ministry condemned Ukraine on the latest attack. Iran said that the strike triggered an explosion, killing one sailor and injured another. Iran called the attack an act of aggression and said it would defend its national interest and security. According to Iranian state media, IRNA, the country's foreign ministry has summoned Ukraine's chargé d'affaires in Tehran to protest over an attack it described as hostile and criminal. The action from Iran's foreign ministry comes after Ukrainian armed forces struck a Russian warship in the Caspian Sea. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that the armed forces struck Iranian vessels used in military cargo shipments with long-range strikes. He also said in a post on X that Ukraine's long-range strikes also targeted a weapons manufacturing plant in Russia's Kirov and a fuel and lubrications depot in Rostov-on-Don. Zelensky also claimed that Russia has been passing on its satellite observations to Iran in West Asia in a bid to enable Tehran to launch strikes in the region. In a post on X, the Ukrainian president said that there is a clear correlation between Russia's satellite imagery of the sites and Iranian strikes. He added that 4 bases well within Russian satellites' area of interest, and this includes 2 in Bahrain, 1 in Jordan and 1 in Kuwait. Amid Zelensky's claims, U.S. President Trump said that he trusted China and Russia to not help in Iran in the war with Washington. Trump warned that if they did get involved, it would be bad for them. The U.S. President said that Russian President Vladimir Putin has told him that he would not sell weapons to Iran. Speaking to reporters at the White House, Trump said that he trusted Putin. So will Iran strike Ukraine? Maybe, but does Iran have the capability to strike Ukraine? The answer to this question is yes. Iran has one of the largest and most diverse missile arsenal in West Asia, with thousands of ballistic and cruise missiles capable of striking major cities in Eastern Europe. Iran's medium-range ballistic missiles, or MRBMs, like Sejal, Imad, Qadr and Khurramshahr has the capacity of striking targets within a range of 2,000 to 4,000 kilometers. It also has kamikaze drones like the Shahid 136, which has a strike range of approximately 2,500 kilometers. Now, the distance between western Iran and Kyiv is roughly between 2,000 to 2,400 kilometers. And this means that any of these missiles and drones can strike Kyiv or any other big cities if Iran decides to launch an attack on Ukraine.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, you saw Ukraine's capability there. Their drones struck transport ships in the Caspian Sea, vessels that have been moving military cargo between Iran and Russia. Iran is warning the attack cannot go unanswered. Quote, that raises a central question for today. Is the Iran war linking to and potentially widening into the war in Eastern Europe? And now we have multiple theaters in play, or are these just still separate theaters? And that just happened to share some of the same players and supply lines. Russia has leaned on the Iranian drones and weapons for quite some time now. Iran has used the Caspian route frequently, and now Ukraine is hitting that route. Does that force the two conflicts closer together, or can they still be contained? Well, look at the rest of the board. The Houthis are now launching missiles again towards Saudi Arabia. President Trump is meeting with Lebanon's President Aoun about ending hostility with Israel and dealing with Hezbollah just last week. A new U.S.-Saudi civil nuclear cooperation deal is in the offing. It brings them potentially into the Abraham Accords and further isolates the Iranians. Is the war widening, or are we watching parallel pressure points that still have room to stay separate and are actually shutting it down a little bit more than we think it is? Well, joining me to work through that aspect question is my guest today is independent journalist and combat veteran Matt Tardio. He's a Green Beret. He led multiple killer capture missions in Afghanistan and wiped out ISIS-K without losing a single American under his command. And he's one of the clearest national security voices out there today. And he backs it up with receipts, man. Matt, thanks for coming on today. It was short notice, I know. I appreciate you.
I stood you guys up last week. I completely forgot I had surgery.
That was my first thought. I'm like, hey, he stood me up for surgery last week. So.
I was like, right. I owe him one. I owe him one. I gotta be.
All right, man. So for those of us that have been watching this, the Caspian Sea is no surprise to you or me. How much have the Iranians been using it to resupply themselves, though, as opposed to get stuff to the Russians?
It flows both ways. It flows both ways. It flows both ways in weapons and money and sanctions evasion. So it's been widely used for the last several years, obviously throughout the entire war between Russia and Ukraine, but also, during this current conflict, it was still being used when we had gone in there. We knew this. I'm not sure if it was the United States or the Israelis that ended up doing it, but we did bomb Iranian ports in the Caspian Sea back towards the beginning of the war. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they've rebuilt them. So that definitely appears like, if the U.S. does open back up with hostilities, it's going to be the next point of contention where the United States is likely just going to blast it back into oblivion like we did Bandar Abbas.
Yeah, I thought I read a report that we had hit the ports again at the beginning of this latest tranche, the stop-start air tasking orders that we've been doing the last 2 weeks or so. But
it's not what we've done to Bandar Abbas. Let's be clear about that.
Right.
Bandar Abbas, we've knocked out telecommunications, bridges, railways, all sorts of stuff, and just isolated that whole place. And then at the same time, decimated the ports. So that is likely what's going to end up happening up there if they don't get their act together very soon.
Yeah. Do you think there's any credibility to the threat that they'll fire long-range missiles at Kiev?
Is it going to make a difference? That's the real question. As far as credibility, this is the same one that just threatened. This is the same Iran that threatened to attack the UK last week, right? Let's be clear.
Right.
Yeah. Let's say they do. That's another Tuesday night for Ukraine. Iran doesn't have the same ballistic missile capabilities that they used to at the beginning of the war. That's very clear. When at least it goes to the number of munitions that they can fire. And also, Ukraine's been dealing with this threat for a very long period of time. Like I said, it's another Tuesday night in Ukraine. Let Iran play around, because the benefit to Ukraine vastly outweighs the number of ballistic missiles that would be coming their way, and they have the ability to counter them. So I don't think they're too concerned with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't surprised that the Ukrainians managed to hit a Russian Navy ship in the Caspian Sea, a warship
No, no,
type thing. Uh, were you surprised that they took on the cargo ships?
not at all. No, it's like an inevitability. I think I talked to you several months ago, about what my take is, post Venezuela, moving into Iran. Everybody said it was crazy before Venezuela, that we're going to go from Venezuela over to Iran. All this ties back in with Russia and China. This is just another step that kind of confirms it. There's a reason Trump was negotiating with Putin for so long. So I'm not surprised that Ukraine is now getting involved in taking those ships out. I also wouldn't be shocked if it's their own intelligence, because they have decent intel assets now available. Obviously, they've been watching this stuff for a very long period of time. They know where Russia is getting the vast majority of these weapons from. And so it's an inevitable step, I guess, in the progression of the war.
Yeah. Do you see what's your take on Putin's response? Do you see him doing anything different than what he's done before vis-a-vis America, the United States?
No, Putin's been. I mean, no. Putin knows if he ends up attacking a NATO country, or even the United States directly, I think it was a very real threat, which is why Trump made sure to secure Greenland and have the Golden Dome set up there before we went to Venezuela, because the impact that would have on Russia. Same thing with Iran, to make sure that that was secure. So I think there's a very real threat there. But whether or not he's dumb enough to pull that trigger would be the question, because that would pretty much be the end of Putin and modern day Russia. You'd have another collapse. Economical collapse. I mean, we would. They're already in dire straits for where they're at. You look at the oil crisis that's currently taking place over there. You look at 50% of their GDP now going to the war front. They're running out of armor. They're running out of equipment, and a lot of that. And I've said this before. I would argue, I could have a very intelligent argument on this, that Donald Trump has actually done more for Ukraine since he's been president than Joe Biden did his entire presidency. In my opinion, we had Joe Biden that was just kind of feeding the military industrial complex here in the United States by pushing weapons, forward to Ukraine, but it still wasn't enough, and they weren't getting to where they were going. Wars are won and lost via logistics, and what we have, this entire global campaign is going after the logistical aspects of that war, along with the logistical aspects of Iran. Those two things are indisputable, absolutely indisputable, and we are seeing an impact on the battlefront that is tangible.
What did Trump do that enabled that?
Which portion enabled all of this to happen?
The Ukrainians now, from the casual observer's point of view, the Ukrainians are now able to consistently hit the logistics points that Russia needs to continue its fight at the same level. What Trump did something right. I mean, he made some strategic decisions.
He made some. He made some big
right?
changes. Yeah, and I don't want to go too in depth with it for sensitive reasons, but there's a reason a good chunk of our intelligence community got fired when he came into office, and that needed to be done. Absolutely needed to be done. There's a reason the FBI got gutted. That needed to get done. We had moles, plants, sympathizers, etc. that were within there, and we had people, quite frankly, that were just making really stupid decisions that were putting American interests at risk, and American lives at risk. After that, Trump went from saying we're going to be supplying all of these weapons versus, his now public stance, which I think he stated 2 days ago, which is NATO's, these countries are buying the weapons. What they choose to do with them is up to them. And obviously they're choosing to give them to Ukraine. Also, Ukraine, I think the more direct question would be, what has Ukraine done in order to better position themselves to be able to further those attacks? And they have been the leading cutting edge when it goes down to drone technology and counter drone technology. Their flamingos, their long range drones that they've conducted attacks well over 2,000 kilometers into Russia, and have had very good success. So I think it's twofold. You've got weapons that are being supplied by other countries that Trump can go, I don't care what you do with them. And then you've also got Ukraine that's better positioned itself to be able to take care of those threats and go after the logistical aspect over inside of Russia as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised. I'm surprised that Ukraine hasn't hit the cargo routes in Caspian Sea earlier. Because I mean they've fired on Russian ships in the Mediterranean even.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, they pushed really far out, and it's amazing. I've got maps that I ended up sharing of this. There's a video over on my X profile that actually shows, number one, the amount of shadow fleet tankers. So when Trump came into office, and it's very obvious, You can see it. You can see the change in our NATO partners. You can see change in different European allies. The amount of ships, shadow fleet tankers that the United States, that the EU has actually gone after and taken out, as well as Ukraine targeting those as well. We also were doing that, by the way. Some of those same shadow fleet tankers were running in and out of Venezuela.
That's
right?
right.
So all of this stuff is leading to the economical collapse of Russia because they've had to work around these sanctions. And that's really the end of it. And then, 1/3 of their GDP coming from oil, and knocking out all of those refineries, causing that like oil collapse over inside of Russia. And at the same time, taking out the financial network and the oil network for China as well. It put a huge strain on the Chinese economy. For those people that don't know, Russia gets a lot of its like raw material from China to build and fund that war machine.
That's right.
When we took it and we started this war with Iran, number one, in Venezuela, when we ended up ripping Maduro out of office, that was a huge source of sanctioned oil that was going from Venezuela to China that China was able to get for pennies on the dollar. They do the same thing with Russia. But 40% of Chinese oil, like that's being used over inside China, came from the Strait of Hormuz. They bought 90% of Iran's oil.
Yeah.
And now none of it's getting out. So what's that make China do? Well, now they got to outsource it from legitimate places, and it causes the cost to go up. It's caused a boatload of their refineries to get shut down over inside of China, slows the economy down and raises the prices. And at the same time, you're taking away Russia's ability to pay for it. And those are the effects you're seeing on the front line. So if you're asking what has Trump done to enable this, number one, it's allowed them to ease pressure on the front and to be able to take some of those munitions and start directing them elsewhere.
Yeah, and I think everybody gets focused on the air tasking order and what targets have they struck tonight. What are we taking off the board? Are we killing enough people? Are we breaking enough of their things? And those kind of things. But honestly, the hit on Venezuela and its impact on China and Russia vis-a-vis all that, and the changes that he made in policy on the weapons going to NATO instead of going to Ukraine, I think, and the blockade going back in place on Iran's ports, it has the ability to have much, much more negative impact on the IRGC and the strategic players than anything else. We'll be right back with Matt Tardio. Continuous discussion, and we'll move to Matt. I want to get your take on the meeting with President Aoud of Lebanon, and that whole discussion, because I found it very interesting. The appearance of a relationship taking shape there. We'll be right back with Matt Tardio.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home, went to bed.
A handshake for Joseph Aoun, the first Lebanese president to visit the White House in 17 years, and a show of support for Lebanon.
It's been a very badly treated place and country, and we're going to have it properly treated and treated with respect that it deserves.
After the warm welcome, it was down to business. Aoun's agenda: disarming Hezbollah and ensuring the militant group and Israel withdraw from southern Lebanon, the terms of the US-brokered framework deal. But the first phase is already facing its first hurdle. Hours before Presidents Trump and Aoun's White House meeting, the Lebanese army claimed Israeli troops opened fire near their units, deployed in a so-called pilot zone, the southern Lebanese town of Zawtar al-Gharbiya, recently vacated by Israeli soldiers. President Aoun hopes the US will use its leverage with Israel to make sure it stays out of southern Lebanon. Mr. Trump says he'll look into what's happening in pilot zones. He's also prepared to speak to Hezbollah. He's less forthcoming about its backer, Iran.
I will tell you, they want to desperately meet, and until they're ready to meet in a meaningful way, we have no interest in even.
At the same time, there are rising fears of a new front in the war with Iran, as Tehran-backed Houthi rebels threaten to blockade the Red Sea. President Trump says if that happens, the US, quote, will just have to take care of business. Jagruti Dave, CGTN, Washington.
On Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast, and my guest today is Green Beret combat veteran and independent journalist Matt Tardio, who's tracking these combat operations very, very closely. The best in independent media, in my opinion, folks, for real time and near real time tracking of this and producing high quality shows. Matt, this meeting with President Aoun, one thing people need to understand, I think this guy's an Army combat veteran, right? He's been wounded in combat, I believe. And they seem to, President Trump's good at making appearances to seem to hit it off, but they seem to meld in the clips that I've seen of them. The big question, though, is not necessarily Israel, is it? It's Hezbollah and the Lebanon's ability to get rid of them, right?
Yeah. So to put it in perspective, I think first we got to properly frame that meeting, because what the media ends up saying is, well, the U.S. brokered a peace deal in between Israel and Lebanon.
Yeah.
No, they didn't. No, we didn't. Nope. That is the dumbed down version of it. It was we brokered a deal with the Lebanese government to kick Hezbollah out of the parliament, to have the Lebanese military go and start replacing the Israelis after they've now cleared and held that terrain. So that way the Israelis can then retrograde, and then the Lebanese can take care of their own problem on their own soil. The issue is that, October 7th and to beyond, go up to present day, there's roughly 90 to 100,000 Hezbollah fighters over inside of Lebanon. At the time. And now we're looking at roughly, 60, 70,000 worse. So they've been severely degraded, but the Lebanese military is only about 80,000 strong. And they don't have nearly the amount of capabilities that the United States brings or that Israel brings. And it's certainly not that amount of experience. So allowing the Israelis to go in and actually take that terrain and hold it and then retrograde back, it's easier to defend on the ground than it is to advance and take terrain. Just numerically speaking, strategically speaking, I would rather be in an offensive position versus an advancing one, situation dependent. But that is kind of the big story there that actually ends up coming out of it. Hezbollah is the largest non-state foreign terror organization, vastly funded by Iran. And so when we're talking about the U.S. policies over inside of the Iran conflict, dismantling their nuclear weapons program, limiting ballistic missile capabilities, but the big one, limiting their foreign terror organizations. Hezbollah is operating over inside of Mexico. They were operating inside of Venezuela, and obviously we've had terror attacks, even Hezbollah-inspired terror attacks. They're not going to come flat out and say this guy was Hezbollah, but I think it was pretty clear that the guy from, what was it, Chicago, that shot up the Jewish synagogue in school. That guy, he had brothers that were in Hezbollah. It's really obvious. Recent trips to Lebanon, etc. So we need to take care of that issue. And investing, in my opinion, in that is a good thing for the United States of America, because it does protect our national security.
Yeah, one of the interesting things the president announced is that he's reopened commercial flights back into the airport. I'm assuming in Beirut, it's located at. How important are those types of decisions, to loosen up on that? Is that okay? I mean, you just talked about the guy in Michigan and the Jewish synagogue. Was it Michigan? The Jewish synagogue where he tried to get in and kill the kids in school there. I mean, his brother was a commander in Hezbollah, is what we
Yeah,
found out.
I think it's a good thing. You go back a couple of years, we had the IRGC that was using that airport. In the U.S., we're not just doing this to broker things. Like, Lebanon's getting stuff out of this. They're getting training, likely going to end up getting training from the United States military equipped, and then also monetarily help rebuilding southern Lebanon. Do I think it's the best policy? No. Do I think it's a movement in the right direction? Absolutely. I don't agree with everything the Trump administration does, and nor do I think that what they're telling us on face value is actually what's taking place, right? As we've been talking about.
Right.
But absolutely, if you want to start pulling people in, and you want to start fixing things, the way these guys get in there, and these terrorist organizations, and they start corrupting and taking over, is because of the financial downfalls of these countries. You wonder why some of the poorest countries on the planet have such a raging terrorist problem, and that's why. They're able to go in, financially provide, and do other things, prop up, puppet regimes, etc. And if we want to combat that, unfortunately, the United States also has to play the same game, but we got to do it in a way that guarantees victory for them, because losing means they lose and they die, and so do their families. So we've got to guarantee a victory for them, and we've got to be able to financially get them in the right position to where they can continue to project and move forward in a pro-West, option.
Yeah. So Hezbollah, are these folks foreign fighters that have come into Lebanon, or are they organic?
Yes and no.
Lebanese citizens. It's a
Both.
mix then.
Both. You had, Hezbollah was fighting against Giuliani over inside Syria, which I do not support. I will openly state it. I do not support putting that man in power over inside Syria. But when he was running around as a foreign terrorist, after he got done killing U.S. troops, let's just be perfectly clear about who this terrorist is, jihadist. As he was doing that, after he got done killing U.S. troops and focusing on what was taking place in Syria, he was fighting Hezbollah. IRGC was using Hezbollah to fight against them on behalf of al-Assad, to the point where Hezbollah was also in charge of their chemical weapons program, production, transportation, things like that, for the Assad regime over in Syria. With that being said, you did have Hezbollah fighters from Syria. So if you're asking foreign fighters, well, are we talking about Syrians that got exiled and moved into Lebanon? Absolutely, that took place. But for the most part, the people over inside of southern Lebanon, they're from that area. They've been built up. Have they crossed the border into, who knows, how many of them there are that have done that. But yes, you do have some, but not like ISIS, to where you had them flooding from all over the world. Totally different.
Right. So you mentioned the parliament. Hezbollah being in the parliament and everything. As a matter of fact, I think the speaker of parliament in Lebanon is a Hezbollah guy, my understanding anyway. And the president's I believe, a Christian, and that's still by law, I believe. But still, if Hezbollah is controlling the legislative body, they're probably in a lot of the executive branch positions too, decision-making positions, all the way down. And everything. How does the United States help them eradicate that infestation? I'll call it an infestation, like a virus or bugs.
Yeah, by doing exactly what we're doing now. I think one of the biggest mistakes the U.S. made over in Afghanistan wasn't acknowledging or recognizing the role that the Taliban plays for a lot of the people out there. Right? Like it would be absurd for people to state that Hezbollah doesn't have support of the people in some of these areas, and to say that they're, a group that people don't back and get behind. And it's the same thing with the Taliban. The Taliban took care of families. They provided law, order, whether or not it was radical Islamic law and order, but I mean, law and order nonetheless, in areas that the government wouldn't get to.
Right.
And what we failed to do, I think, was to listen to those people and to be able to figure out how to actually make that happen. Much like most of the guys on the ground, with experience over in Afghanistan, living out in the villages and doing all that stuff, we looked at it and we're like, at some point, our politicians need to understand that the Taliban needs to have some sort of representation within the Afghan government in order to make this work. And I think if you want that Hezbollah situation, because right now they're way stronger than the Lebanese military, if you want that to work, you're going to have some sort of representation and let that work itself out over time. Obviously, strict rules, et cetera, in place, but have that work itself out over time. And Hezbollah, by the way, for a lot of people that don't know, rooted within the PLO, in the PA, right? So it again, we can say all roads lead back to Russia, but when you start understanding the radical Islamic take, whether they're Sunni or Shia, it doesn't really matter. They all have the common belief that Israel should not, be occupying Jerusalem. That's their term, not mine. And they believe it's occupation because they believe it's their God-given right to that land. And so how do you get rid of that? Well, education, et cetera. But you've got to first open that door. I said in my last interview, like an hour ago, unless we are willing to commit literal mass genocide against these people, which is the only way to eradicate radical Islam, just like any other crazy belief, and eventually get people pushed back. We had to kill a buttload of Germans to get them to come to the table. When we had Imperial Japan, we had to drop 2 nukes on them to get them to, bend the knee. Unless we're willing to go that route, which I don't think America is, then we need to actually look at, this route that we're currently taking. So do I necessarily agree with it? I would rather put warheads on foreheads personally to eradicate them, but that's not the stomach of the American population. I don't think Trump wants that. So yeah, we've got to start working that in somehow and let that work itself out.
Yeah, I mean it's a very complex situation, especially when you put in you have the fundamentalist Islamists, which are the real nut jobs, and then you have those Muslims that say that they're mainstream and they act like it, but then you have this whole concept of taqiyya and how the objectives that Islam takes everywhere it goes, and it's a tough situation, man. We got to take another break. When we come back, we'll talk about the Houthis. I want to get your take on what you think the impact of these strikes on Saudi Arabia is going to be in the larger world. We'll be right back with Matt Tardio.
Take a look at the water you just poured. It looks clean. It tastes fine. But what's really in it? Lead, fluoride, arsenic, chlorine, pesticides, PFAS, forever chemicals, pharmaceutical residues, and bacteria. Every single day, these toxins flow straight from your tap into your glass, into your family. It's time for Sentry H2O from Worldview Water. Sentry H2O is the ultimate water treatment technology, designed to remove harmful toxins, balance your water's pH, and enrich it with essential minerals like calcium and magnesium, the way nature intended. From commercial-scale systems to whole house filtration to crisp, delicious drinking water right at your kitchen sink and shower, Sentry H2O delivers cleaner, healthier water everywhere you need it. No plumber, no tools, no plumbing knowledge required. Perfect for homes, apartments, rentals, RVs, refrigerators, and more. Because everyone deserves access to clean, healthy water. Visit worldviewwater.net. That's worldviewwater.net.
You're watching live now from Fox as we're following some breaking news coming in here out of the Middle East and taking you out to this live look here. This is courtesy of Marine Traffic. This is a live look right now at the Bab al-Mandeb Strait ship tracker. As we're learning, Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels said today that they fired missiles and drones at Saudi Arabia in response to Saudi airstrikes on a strategic Red Sea city in another escalation over vital shipping routes in the Middle East, where the United States and Iran are fighting for control over the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the Houthis' military spokesman said in a pre-recorded statement that the attack targeted facilities in 2 Red Sea cities that belong to Aramco, which is the world's largest oil company. Saudi Arabia's civil defense said alerts sounded multiple times early today in both cities, but the kingdom hasn't commented any further. So as we're following this breaking news, we're also learning here that there were no reported strikes overnight in Iran. In this break from nearly 2 weeks of consecutive nights of U.S. attacks, though tension remains high following a recent escalation between the two countries over the Strait of Hormuz. Now, this rising tension in the Red Sea is threatening to further choke global shipping because the rebels have said they would close the strait to Saudi-linked shipping. Now, that strait at the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula is a vital shipping choke point connecting the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden. Around 12% of the world's trade, including a quarter of its container traffic, passes through the Narrows. Now, the Houthis targeted 2 Saudi oil tankers in the Red Sea this week. In response, Saudi Arabia struck a port in Yemen, the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen confirming that today. And the strikes late Friday, last night, hit the city's port and the state-run telecommunications corporation, injuring 2 people. Now, the Saudi-led coalition fighting in Yemen said it didn't hit the port, but struck legitimate military targets, which were linked to threats to commercial vessels in the Red Sea. Iran's foreign minister called for diplomacy and dialogue to solve the Yemen conflict without military confrontations in an interview that was published today in a state-run Iran newspaper. Also, the Associated Press reporting this here as well. U.S. Central Command didn't immediately respond to a request for comment there from the Associated Press. However, unlike the previous 13 nights, it also didn't announce new strikes. So we are following this breaking news here out of the Middle East.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and man, we got a lot of war these days. Just listening to what the Houthis are now doing to the Saudi Arabians. And my guest today is Matt Tardio. Matt, a couple of interesting things in that little clip. That's why I chose it. One is they're supposedly the Houthis are only shooting at the Saudis. Now they're not shooting at anybody else, and they made it very clear in their public statements.
The beginning of the program, I said, is this the same Iran that threatened to attack the UK when you brought up Ukraine? I remember the Houthis last go round saying that they were only going to be targeting ships associated with the Zionist regime. And what ended up happening was everybody got targeted. And the only ships that were allowed to, transit the Red Sea were Russian and Chinese. That's it. Everybody else was getting blown up. So we'll see. I doubt it, but we'll see.
The other thing that I found interesting is the Iranians, they put their diplomatic guy out there going, hey, we really want to settle this through diplomacy. Is that something that's unexpected, or from your perspective, like mine, it's the same old thing?
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So the Iranians have been pushing, again, the Houthis, Ansarullah, or another foreign terror organization funded by Iran. And they're not a little foreign terror organization either. They're very big. They control 70% of the population over inside of Yemen. When you look at it on a map, you're like, all right, this is just 1/3 of the country, right? But that is 70, 80% of the population over there. It's massive, right? It's a lot of people. But Donald Trump last week, when all of this came out, said that if the Houthis start launching attacks, that he's going to hold Iran responsible because they do absolutely control them. What ended up happening was, after Khamenei's funeral, the terrorists from Ansarullah, along with some members of the IRGC, were going to fly back into Sana'a over in Yemen. Saudi Arabia ended up bombing the runway, and then that started this tit for tat back and forth that's now turned into what the Houthis are calling a naval blockade, or a sanctioning of the ships to close Saudi Arabia off, which is not going to turn out good for them.
Yeah. So what's their capability on the water? Do they have a navy, the Houthis?
Navy, no, but they have anti-ship ballistic missiles. They obviously have ballistic missiles. They have drones, and likely some other upgraded stuff that has been sent to them from China and the IRGC. But that is their main threat, is that, these ballistic missiles. They're a lot like Iran, but no, as far as the Navy goes, no. There's been a couple of reports over the last several weeks of kind of like the Somali pirate stuff that was taking place off the coast of Yemen. Nothing significant.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. But let me take a question from the audience that's been sitting there for a few minutes. Go ahead, Shil.
Hello, gentlemen. We have a question from the audience. White Hat is asking, what about Hamas?
That's a great question. It's been kind of quiet down in Gaza.
No, it hasn't. They're still blowing them up. They released a video, I think it was like 2 days ago, them blowing up. But I think what they're getting to is that, Trump had announced, that they had made peace with Hamas, and that all of that was coming to an end, and he ended another war. Like, the man's indefensible sometimes, like, when are you going to stop making negotiations with foreign terror organizations? Like, there's a reason still to this day standing U.S. policy is we don't negotiate with terrorists. Yeah, it's not going well. they're still being terrorists, and they're likely going to end up getting killed. But Israel has to focus its efforts. They're worried about Hezbollah over inside of Lebanon, which is their main threat right now. Hamas has been grossly cut off. So has their ability to launch attacks. You don't see a lot of like large scale rocket attacks or anything like that coming from Gaza anymore. And so they've got a task prioritized. Their military is only so big. And so once they get done with Lebanon, I have no doubt that they'll go solve that problem with Hamas inside of Gaza. And then they'll move into Judea, Samaria, West Bank. I don't care what you call it. They'll go in there and they'll start taking care of that issue following Gaza.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, the Hamas guys, the place that the so-called peace agreement is supposed to be is they're at the disarmament phase for Hamas, and I say that quite tongue-in-cheek because they're not giving up anything, right? I mean, there's no indication that they're going to lay down their weapons, say, okay, yeah, we'll disarm.
No, as a matter of fact, the one video of them getting a bomb dropped on, the last one I saw was them rearming and re-equipping and transferring of weapons. They're not giving them up. They're going to have to die. Hamas is, and I've said this before, after seeing specifically all of the unreleased footage from October 7th, and having seen and heard tales of what ISIS was doing, I stand by this statement wholeheartedly, and I mean it with every ounce in my body. Like, Hamas is worse than ISIS. People say Hamas is ISIS. You're giving Hamas too much credit. Hamas is worse than ISIS. They are absolutely horrible human beings. Yeah, I mean, they at least in ISIS, you had people that were pouring in from around the world that had some sort of culture, something that was appropriated to them, pushing radical Islamic terror. Inside Gaza, where you have Hamas, they have had nothing but radical Islamic terror preached to them in this confined space. From the day that they were born, being taught that they're going to grow up to be martyrs. Number one best-selling book in Gaza, Mein Kampf, right? Like there's all sorts of things that we can point to. They're absolutely horrible human beings. They're going to have to get eradicated. I don't know how else to say that. When I brought up and I had stated that the only way to actually get rid of the ideology is by killing them, that's one of the examples that's going to take place.
Yeah, I mean, the October 7th operation, that atrocity should have been the big indicator to all of the people in the world that hate these nasty, barbaric people, or at least the tactics. Hate the tactics. You don't have to hate the people individually, but hate these tactics and strategies of barbarism that go back to the 6th, 7th century. And you overlay modern technology on it and you get October 7th. I mean, that's the big indicator as to what these people are. And like the Nazis of World War II, it took the entire destruction of the Nazi command structure. I'm not talking about the military guys that were left over from pre-Nazi military that ended up surrendering. I'm talking about the Nazi apparatus. You had to completely obliterate it, and it took Hitler killing himself along with his top, propagandists and their families and those kind of things, right?
Yeah, I'm sure it was Israel that killed Hitler back then too. Right. Yeah, no, I think it's worse than that. That you're looking at like economical causes and things like that, people blaming and a different radical ideology. This, you're looking at people born and raised from birth to think that any and all means, like it is written in their most recent charter that they are allowed to take the land of Israel back by any and all means. That included in their minds, apparently, not allegedly, but apparently in their minds, defiling human bodies, shoving sticks up people's anus, things like that, raping them with whatever's laying on the ground. I mean, just horrendous things. They strangled a baby. I mean, let's just throw that one out there. I mean, these are not decent human beings.
No, they're not at all.
I think it's also important. I think it's also important to state that there was 3 different waves of attacks that took place that day. The first one was primarily Hamas. And then what ended up happening was you had a video that came out of the Nova Music Festival that hit Telegram and got spread around Gaza like wildfire. And it was of a Hamas fighter shooting somebody that was hiding behind a tree. And then it went out with the Quranic verse talking about killing every Jew hiding behind a rocking tree. And that inspired a second wave and then a third. And in the second and third waves, you had Palestinians, all right, people that poured across the border on their own to do these things because of that radical ideology. Just because they're not in Hamas doesn't mean they weren't raised that way. So when they saw that, they took it as a sign from the Quran and like divinity, basically, and poured across the border to continue on with that. So I just wanted to point that one out.
Yeah, that's why you had things come out like the recording of the phone call between a son and his parents, and the son is very proud of the atrocities that he just committed. I mean, that's how that comes about. So one question for you is, how are they getting resupplied? I mean, Israel has really taken apart a lot of that infrastructure. How are they getting resupplied? Through the Egyptian border?
No. Shell's more than welcome to go over to my profile right now and put it up in the purple pill, share it with the space that's over there. I'll email it to you afterwards. One of the things I did when I was over there was I went through Gaza, and then I went over to the Kogat site, which is where all the humanitarian aid is shipped in. And originally the guy didn't want to have this conversation with me whatsoever when I brought this up. There's only one location that moves enough stuff in and out of Gaza to where you are going to have that level of armament be able to come through, and that is through the humanitarian aid being shipped into that country. So I know that they had that contraband, and I went over there. I eventually convinced this gentleman to let me go take a look. The amount of contraband for 1 week equated to an entire semi truckload of things that, I mean, you can go with opium, things like that for the monetary purposes, but precursors for explosives themselves, weapons, ammunition, equipment, all of that being smuggled in via the humanitarian aid. And it was troubling. And Israel has this information. They've held on to this information, and they just didn't do anything with it. I published it. Nobody gave a crap about it. And it's geotagged, located, and you can go take a look at those photos. This is stuff that's coming from Hezbollah. This is coming from the PA. This is coming from all sorts of different jihadic organizations that are being put on there and funneling into the country. And again, my location was turned on, time, date, everything. Like, I left that information when I took those pictures. You're more than welcome to go verify everything I just said. That's how they're getting it in.
All right. Well, we got to take one more break before I let you go. I've only got you for 50 minutes. After the break, we'll see a video about the nuclear deal with Saudi Arabia. I want to get your take real quick on that before I let you go, Matt. We'll be right back with Matt Tardio.
At a certain age, you stop chasing younger. You start protecting what helps you feel steady, strong, and well. Your body's collagen matters. It supports the structure of your skin, joints, and connective tissue. But as the years go by, your body needs more support from the inside. That's where Bella Grace Elixir comes in. Bella Grace Elixir combines Verisol collagen, the world's most clinically proven collagen, with asteryl astaxanthin and cat's claw in a proprietary blend designed to help support the processes that reconstruct collagen, while also offering antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. And this isn't just for women. It's for men and women who want to age with more confidence, more care, and a daily wellness routine that supports the body from within. One simple elixir, thoughtfully formulated for whole body wellness. Take care of the body that has carried you this far. Order Bella Grace Elixir today at melissahousebg.com.
As the White House remains steadfast in its objection to Iran's nuclear program, it's reaching a new deal with one of its neighbors. The Trump administration announcing an agreement with Saudi Arabia that could greenlight the kingdom to pursue a civilian nuclear program.
President Trump's agenda in the Middle East has been commerce, not conflict. Saudi Arabia has been an ally of the United States since the nation's forming.
The Wall Street Journal first reported the deal, which lasts for 30 years and could involve American companies. It reportedly does not require Saudi Arabia to abide by the International Atomic Energy Agency's toughest protocols, which allow for surprise inspections at nuclear sites.
The revolutionary aspect of this agreement is that the United States is willing to, at least theoretically, transfer highly sensitive technology without the same level of oversight that one would expect.
The deal will likely have to go through Congress for final approval, where some lawmakers are concerned the U.S. is throwing a match on an already unstable region.
We cannot put a situation into the Persian Gulf, in addition to Iran, that would create another country with the ability to enrich uranium and put them on the road to developing a nuclear weapon.
But the administration is defending the deal.
The U.S. is not going to reach any agreement with any country in the world that leads to the risk of proliferation.
And the Saudi crown prince has been clear that if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, his country will pursue one as well. In New York, Caroline Elliott, Fox News.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More Monday. My guest is independent journalist and former Green Beret and combat veteran Matt Tardio. And Matt, I know I got to let you go here in about a minute, but I just wanted to get your take on this potential deal. It's got some interesting things about it. I have read that they're not going to get enriching capability as much as it's going to be a power plant type nuclear material for power purposes, and that the enrichment process will happen somewhere else. And the other thing is, and the part that got my attention is the president said, only if they join the Abraham Accords will this deal go through. I see that some pretty good things right there.
Yeah, so we got to start making peace with Saudi Arabia and getting them on the Abraham Accords. They currently have an invitation from BRICS to join. So this goes back to the larger global scale of things. And also we need to look at the Strait of Hormuz and who's going to end up controlling that, right, and providing security for it, because the United States isn't going to be the endless police of the Strait of Hormuz. That's going to require all the Gulf nations to jump on there. Saudi Arabia has been taking several steps. They helped us out greatly during the global war on terror. And there's no reason why we shouldn't help them along that way. Abraham Accords are nothing more than recognizing that Israel is allowed to exist, and if you got an issue, you're going to solve it diplomatically instead of firing ballistic missiles and sending over foreign terror organizations, right? So it's a good deal as far as I'm concerned for them, what they're going to get out of it. And let's not forget that this is the home of Mecca. A lot of the times when Saudi Arabia is making a movement, it speaks volumes to the Islamic world. So it is a very strategic move by the Trump administration in order to start combating Iran.
Yeah, I see a lot more positives than potential negatives out of that one. I'm like you, especially since they are the home of Mecca and Medina, and when they speak, the Islamic world listens.
Right.
Even the Shiites listen, and that's hard to get accomplished. Well, man, thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate it. I know you got to run. Where can folks find you on X and your show?
Yeah, you guys can find me over on X by searching my name, Matt Tardio, or you can go over to YouTube and you can search Speak the Truth Actual. It's at Speak the Truth Actual, or you can just type my name in there and I'll pop up too. That's where I'm putting things out twice a day, every day. X, I'm constantly doing things like this and updating people that with a lot of information I'm not putting out elsewhere. So,
all right, man. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Till next time.
Thank you.
All right, folks, I've got one question in the audience, and then I'm going to do a tribute to my friend Sam Faddis, who was a month ago today, was a guest on this show. Shell, go ahead with the question. I'll take it.
Go ahead, AJ.
I was going to ask Colonel in regards to Houthis' conduct at the Bab al-Mandeb choke point that, there's Somaliland at the Horn of Africa, which is literally on the other side of the waters, and Israel has recognized them, and they have a lot of assets there, and CENTCOM also have a presence there. So my point is, Houthis are flying a little bit too close to the sun, sir. Am I wrong? Your opinion is appreciated. Thank you.
I think you're very much right. And Lindsey Graham's funeral is going to be taking place soon. And Prime Minister Netanyahu and Volodymyr Zelensky from Ukraine are both scheduled to meet with the President of the United States. I don't know if they'll be together, but I guarantee you that is going to be a subject, because we will shut them down if they try to close that strait. Just like the Iranians are paying a heavy, heavy price. Thanks for the question, AJ. Well, my friends, before we end the show today, I need to take a moment This past Saturday evening, we lost a true American patriot and a good friend of mine, Sam Faddis, better known to many of you as @RealSamFaddis on X. Sam passed quietly at the University of Pennsylvania Hospital in Philadelphia. He was surrounded by his wife, Gina, and their 4 children, his remaining brother, and other family members. He had been fighting a hard battle with post-COVID interstitial lung disease and pneumonia. The family has asked for privacy as they grieve, and I ask all of you to respect that while keeping them in your prayers. Sam was a retired CIA operations officer who spent roughly 20 years in the clandestine service. He led the first CIA team into northern Iraq months before the 2003 invasion. He later headed the Counterterrorism Center's Weapons of Mass Destruction Unit. He operated in some of the most dangerous corners of the Middle East, South Asia, and Europe, recruiting sources, running operations, and doing the hard, quiet work that keeps this country safer. Before the agency, he served as an Army officer. After the agency, he never stopped serving. He wrote books that told the hard truths about the intelligence community. He became a clear, steady voice on national security, on Steve Bannon's War Room, on Real America's Voice, in A&D and Magazine, which is still out there on Substack, and anywhere else people wanted unvarnished analysis instead of talking points, including exactly 1 month ago on this very show. Well, to me, Sam was more than just a resume. He was a friend. He's a man of conviction, and he loved this country. He spoke his mind, and he never seemed afraid to stand up for what he believed was right. In the days before he left us, I called him one of our best men, and I meant it. We are poorer for his absence. The intelligence community lost a seasoned operator. The truth-telling community lost a fearless voice, and many of us lost a friend. Gina, to you and the children, my deepest condolences. My family and I are praying for you. May God give you strength and comfort in the days ahead. Sam Faddis answered the call. He served with courage, he spoke with clarity, and he leaves behind a legacy of service that will never be forgotten. Rest in peace, Sam. Thank you for everything. You are missed. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have the producers run this clip. This is who Sam Faddis is in his own words. Mr. Producer, go ahead and just close us out one.
Well, thank you very much for the honor of being here tonight. I'm going to give you a little bit of a disclaimer up front. It's like one of those warning labels. In the Central Intelligence Agency, all the record communication is carried out in written form. I mean, they got radios and television, and telephones and stuff, right? But they send what they still call cables back and forth, and that's how you communicate officially. And there's this unofficial expression called cableese, which is the way you write. So it's this very stilted, overly polite form of writing. Think about some Englishmen in a stuffy British club in the late 1800s where everything is understated and indirect and nobody raises their voice. So the disclaimer is this: I was never any good at that. So somewhere in the bowels of headquarters are hundreds of messages back to me in the field, beginning with a statement to the effect of, "Thank you for your candor." You will understand in cableese that's not what that means. That means, you're a rude SOB, aren't you, Faddis? But my intention is not to be rude, and I don't think I'll be rude to any of you. But I think we're talking about some very important matters, and the hour is late, and the risk is very real, and the danger is grave. And so if there was a time to pull punches and dance around issues, it has long passed.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Friends, this is Brandon House. For more than a year now, I've been teaching through the book of Revelation, and the response from you has been overwhelming. You've asked me again and again,